Now, Sir Keir Starmer described a day of shame for Labour as he accepted all the findings of an investigation into its failure to deal with anti-Semitism. But now he's facing more pressure from within the party following the suspension of his predecessor, Jeremy Corbyn. He also had the whip withdrawn for his response to the report's findings. Now there's talk of a civil war emerging within Labour. Well, let's talk to Sir Keir Starmer now. A very good morning to you.
Morning.
Look, first and foremost, on the back of what Jeremy Corbyn said yesterday, is there yet another need for the Labour Party to apologise to the Jewish community?
Well, I apologised yesterday in clear terms. I also apologised on the first day I took over as leader of the Labour Party for our failure to deal with anti-Semitism. The findings in the Commission's report yesterday were clear and rigorous. There were findings of unlawful action, and the right thing to do, in my view, is to accept in full the findings of the Commission, to apologise and recognise the hurt and grief that it has caused Jewish people in the United Kingdom, and to be absolutely committed to carrying out the recommendations in a short period of time. And that was my response, and I had hoped yesterday would be, if you like, a line in the sand. I'd spoken to many Jewish communities, Jewish community leaders. That's what they wanted. They wanted the Labour Party to recognise the hurt and pain, accept the findings, and to move on to rebuild trust with the Jewish community. That is my absolute commitment. I had hoped that that's how yesterday would have gone. Unfortunately, because of the comments of Jeremy Corbyn in response to the report, the day's events took a different turn.
Do you think, now, in the light of that Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite, or at least has said things yesterday which were anti-Semitic?
Well, the report was a full report, and it made no individual findings against Jeremy Corbyn. It's very important that I say that and make that absolutely clear. I was disappointed in Jeremy's response yesterday, particularly since I had said in my response that the Labour Party will not tolerate anti-Semitism, nor will it tolerate those who deny there's a problem of anti-Semitism and say it's all exaggerated or factional, because that, for me, is part of the problem. So I was disappointed in Jeremy's response. It is now subject to an investigation, and the one thing I've learnt from the report yesterday is that the leader of the Labour Party should now not comment any further, let the process take its course. One of the findings in the report yesterday was that there had been interference from the Labour leader's office in individual cases. That shouldn't happen, and I'm not going to make that mistake.
But to go back to the point, do you think his claims of over-exaggeration of the anti-Semitic issue for political gain, as he put it, do you think that comment by him was in itself anti-Semitic?
Well, you're inviting me to comment on the very issue that's being investigated, but I can tell you in general terms how I saw this, or I see this, because I made that clear yesterday, and that is that if you're anti-Semitic, then you shouldn't be in the Labour Party. If you are in denial about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party and say it's all whipped up, it's exaggerated, it's just factional fighting, then that is part of the problem too. I said it yesterday. I've actually said it before, because that only adds to the grief and pain of those that have already been affected by the failure to deal with anti-Semitism over the last few years, which is why I was disappointed with the response of Jeremy Corbyn yesterday morning.
OK, well, you've been very clear on that. So where does that leave people like Len McCluskey, who obviously is head of your biggest donor, the Unite Union? I mean, he's previously said there was no anti-Semitism problem within the Labour Party. He is obviously backed Jeremy Corbyn from what happened yesterday. Can you still take his money?
Well, what Len McCluskey is concerned about is that there shouldn't be a split in the Labour Party, and he's right about that. I don't want a split in the Labour Party. I stood as leader of the Labour Party on the basis that I would unite the party, but also that I would tackle anti-Semitism. I think both of those can be done. There's no reason for a civil war in our party, but we are absolutely determined, I'm absolutely determined, to root out anti-Semitism. I don't want the words Labour and Labour Party and anti-Semitism in the same sentence again. That's about rebuilding trust. That's my job. That's the job of the Labour leadership now. I know that. The Jewish communities are looking at me and they're saying very clearly, we will judge you by what you do, not by what you say. And they're right about that. But I'm determined to restore that trust. And we can have a united Labour Party around that.
Forgive me for interrupting. But are you, on a personal level then, in the light of all you've said this morning, are you comfortable with what Len McCluskey said yesterday?
Well, Len is... I spoke to Len yesterday. He is concerned that there shouldn't be a civil war in the Labour Party, as am I, and there's no need for that. And I think that it's the responsibility of all of us to work forward in a way that unites our party, but I will not renege on my commitment to root out anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. And he
has previously said there wasn't an issue with anti-Semitism within the Labour Party.
Well, and I've previously said that denying there's a problem is part of the problem. But
so can you still take his money?
Len McCluskey and I do not want a split in the Labour Party. Nobody in the Labour Party wants splits or arguments. We need to be united in the Labour Party, but we must not pull back from the commitment to root out anti-Semitism.
You will see, though, Sir Keir, won't you, how people watching this will say, you know, you're prepared, or the party is prepared to take a very strong line against individuals, but not wanting to take a particularly strong line with the head of a union which is providing you with millions of pounds.
Well, look, I've been leader for 6 months. I've already brought about change, and I've made some very difficult decisions that, frankly, people didn't think I would make. So I don't really think that the suggestion that somehow I'm not strong on anti-Semitism and I'm not going to deal with this is a fair reflection of the last 6 months. Wherever issues are raised, they are now dealt with properly by the complaints process, and they will be.
But again, can I just get a clear answer on the money side? You're happy, are you, to keep taking money from Unite, whose leader has said there isn't a problem with anti-Semitism within the Labour Party?
Well, Len McCluskey wasn't saying yesterday that there isn't a problem with anti-Semitism.
He said that previously.
When he said it previously, I said that saying those sort of things is part of the problem. But he didn't say that yesterday. He recognises what the problem is. I spoke to Len McCluskey yesterday. He recognises the anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. He doesn't want a split in the Labour Party. I think we can have a united party, but we must also tackle anti-Semitism.
Well, the report was very clear, wasn't it? And you said you've accepted it in terms of how this was dealt with prior to your appointment as leader. Yeah. And the reflection on that is that it was not handled well. And as you said, as Jeremy Corbyn appeared to intervene in some cases that should have been handled by the party executive. In the light of that, you still campaigned for him to be our Prime Minister at the end of last year. Why did you do that? Why did you stand with him? Why didn't you step down from the shadow cabinet?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn was twice elected leader of the Labour Party. He had a clear mandate. I served in the shadow cabinet as the shadow Brexit secretary, dealing with the Brexit negotiations. Within the shadow cabinet, and actually outside on media, including, I think, on Sky, I spoke out about anti-Semitism. I thought it was right to raise it inside the shadow cabinet and outside the shadow cabinet. But there's no getting away from the findings of the report yesterday. They are clear findings, and we all have to accept them, including myself, which is why I thought the right response yesterday was to accept the findings, to apologise again for the hurt that had been caused, and to make it my absolute business to implement the recommendations as quickly as possible. And that's why we've already agreed an action plan will be put before the Commission within 6 weeks, setting out what action, practical steps we will take on the back of the report.
You're a very clever man. You must have had some inkling as to what was going on while you were serving in the shadow cabinet. Did you let yourself down by staying in position?
I think there was a lot of challenge within the Shadow Cabinet, believe you me, on issues of the rule changes, on the international definition, whether there should be automatic expulsion of those that had been anti-Semitic. And I was very clear in those discussions. I was very clear outside of the Shadow Cabinet on the media. That's a matter of record. I thought we needed voices in and outside the Shadow Cabinet. But the findings yesterday are findings in relation to the Labour Party, to the collective leadership. We all need to accept them, including me, and that is why I apologised yesterday. It's also why I apologised as the first thing I did as Labour leader on the 4th of April when I set out my apology in my acceptance speech and set out my commitment that as the Labour leader, it was my duty to root out anti-Semitism, and I'm not going to shirk from that duty.
What do you make of your deputy's comments yesterday when she said Jeremy Corbyn has a blind spot when it comes to this issue?
Well, Angela Rayner knows Jeremy very well, and I was disappointed, as she was, in Jeremy's response yesterday. I don't want to get too far into the criticism of the response because that is a matter of the due process now, but Angela and I spoke extensively yesterday. We were both really disappointed with the response. This was a day I had hoped where the Labour Party could draw a line, a painful day, of course, in light of the findings, but draw a line and move forward. And I know that's what Jewish communities wanted. They wanted us to accept the report and to move forward on the recommendations. That is how I had hoped yesterday would play out. It didn't. And that's why Angela Rayner said what she did. It's why she and I were very disappointed. And obviously, she and I worked very closely yesterday, as we always do. It
almost sounds. I mean, you can understand. I mean, come on, you're from your previous career, you can understand how that almost sounds sort of slightly apologetic.
Well, of course. I mean, I am apologetic. I've apologised.
No. Forgive me. You've misunderstood. Sort of apologetic towards Jeremy Corbyn. Oh, it's just a bit of a blind spot.
Oh, no, look, I don't think Angela was being apologetic in any shape or form. Look, the decision that was taken yesterday was the right decision, but it was a difficult decision, just as there have been other difficult decisions in the last 6 months. And the one thing Angela Rayner and I have been absolutely clear about as the leader and deputy leader of the party is we're not going to shy away from difficult decisions. Yesterday was a very difficult decision for the Labour Party. It was the right decision. We now need to let the investigation take its course. But I don't think, in light of the decision that was taken yesterday, anybody could say we're being apologetic. On the contrary, I think many people are saying, I didn't think that the Labour Party would take such a difficult decision. We did because of our commitment to rooting out anti-Semitism.
You've talked about not wanting a split in the Labour Party. You've talked about Len McCluskey not wanting a split in the Labour Party. If it is necessary, if a split is actually necessary to save the Labour Party from these calls of anti-Semitism and some form of the sort of racist undertones of all of that, would you be prepared to split the party?
I don't think it's necessary, and my job is to unite the party. I don't think it's necessary. And I don't think it will happen. We need to work together. The vast majority of Labour Party members and supporters are horrified by what's gone on in relation to anti-Semitism and the findings in the report yesterday. They want to pull together. They want to see a united party, and we will work to that end. But it has to sit alongside the commitment to root out anti-Semitism, because that is a matter of values and trust and confidence that goes way beyond the question of simply winning an election or not. It goes to the heart of what the Labour Party is.
In terms of the heart of what the Labour Party is, I mean, you'll have seen in the papers this morning, there is lots of talk as to whether you are having a purge of the militant faction as Neil Kinnock did back in the 80s. Are you trying to drag the Labour Party back to its heart as you see it?
I'm not purging any body or any group within the Labour Party. What I'm being very clear about is that the Labour Party that I lead will not tolerate anti-Semitism, full stop. Nor will it tolerate those that say anti-Semitism in the Labour Party doesn't really exist, it's exaggerated, or it's just a factional war whipped up in or outside the Labour Party, including by the media. So I'm being very clear about that, but I'm not in the business of purging anyone from the Labour Party. I'm in the business of taking difficult decisions to follow through on a commitment that I made, not just to our Jewish communities, but to the British public, that as leader of the Labour Party, I would tackle anti-Semitism, and I'm absolutely determined to do that.
Sir Keir Starmer, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.